Yeah, it kind of transitions us right perfectly into rounds 8 through 10. So at this point, I typically like to have my 3 running backs, 3 receivers, and either a cheat code quarterback, like you mentioned, or Kyle Pitts, a cheat code tight end. You got 7 picks in the books. That's typically how I find my builds. You never want to lock yourself, as you always say. Play those tiers, find where the talent drops off, let it come to you. There's plenty of depth later. But typically, I do find myself, especially with the Kyle Pitts edge, getting my quarterback in this rounds 8 through 10. You highlighted one of my favorites, Trey Lance. Always the Konami upside, sexy as hell. But there's also those like gunslingers, just like Brady throwing it 700 times a season. Like I know the Konami upside sexy, but also there's something nice to just like, especially if you go back to back quarterback and go like Lance and then Brady, who you know is always going to get you close to 20, if not 25. I love balancing those two out. So rounds 8 through 10 is really my sweet spot for the quarterback position. But I do feel some running backs, and as you mentioned in your article, some running backs tend to start reemerge. We can dip back into that running back pool, whereas we almost enter like a wide receiver dead zone in this type of range is how I view it, at least. So you mentioned Trey Lance. Is there some other guys, whether it's a running back, other quarterbacks you want to shout out that you really like in this range?
I think so. I don't know about you. I'm in a couple leagues where it's like redraft with a keeper or two, and you can usually keep them at the round value you got, or maybe the rounds start sliding, right? So I would say in those types of leagues, man, don't be afraid to get a James Cook or even Kenneth Walker in this range, because those are both guys with potential flaws for 2022, and that's why they're going, in the RB3, even borderline RB3 range. But Devin Singletary and Rashad Penny could both be completely out of the picture. In Seattle's case, like, I hope that they have a plan in the future to eventually add like a really good quarterback there. So I think that problem we've seen how quarterback movement works these days. I mean, it wouldn't be shocking if they make a splurge for some, who the hell knows next year. So I wouldn't try to think too far into the future about, what offenses we know are going to be really good or really bad. In Kenneth Walker's case, more so James Cook, though, just being a second round pick on the freaking Bills, man. And a lot of the things about him, just in terms of being the special pass catching back, like, that's what we want. Deandre Swift last year was objectively a terrible rusher. Like, just pick any efficiency stat you want. Jamal Williams was much better. Didn't matter because of how good he is as a receiver. I mean, Austin Eckler, Alvin Kamara, we've never cared when these guys haven't been able to touch 200 carries more years than not, or they barely passed it because of all those targets. So, Dre McFarland always loves to say, Cam Newton didn't throw running backs until he had Christian McCaffrey. Could very well be the same case with Josh Allen and James Cook. And some of the size stuff, man, I understand BMI is a real thing and all that, but he's 5'11", 199. Devin Singletary is like 5'7", 203. Like, is it really, are we positive that James Cook can't handle 10, 12 carries per game either? So I just think that, again, both of those guys, where they're going, particularly James Cook is the one I've been leaning more towards. But yeah, they could definitely be guys that are firmly in, the RB2 range. Hell, a couple things go right, maybe even the RB1 range as early as 2023.
I think that's a great way to shout out those keeper costs as well. The one guy, similar profile to what you're talking about, the pass catching style at running back. I love Chase Edmonds in this range too. Nice. I think he could get, 35% of the carries and still be a top 20 running back because he'll catch 50, 60, maybe even 70 balls. Yes, I know Waddle and Hill are there, but he'll get a ton of space underneath to do some serious damage. So I really like Chase Edmonds in this range as well. And I did mention going back-to-back quarterbacks. I probably wouldn't do that in a redraft league. I actually had my first draft last night. And like, once you have your QB1 locked up, all the quarterbacks tend to fall. Nobody tends to dip. I mean, this is just my personal experience. But that seems to be, year after year. I got Kirk Cousins in round like 20 last night.
You only need one. You only need one.
And you really only need one. Exactly.
If there's a value like that, Cousins in round 20, go right ahead. But you can just stream it. I'd say same thing at tight end. And then also just I try to make this as clear as possible in the article. But do not draft a kicker or defense if you do not have to. And this is not, I do slander kickers a lot. But this just, hey, whatever guy you're looking to draft will almost assure only idiots are going to, if someone in your league wants to carry multiple kickers or defenses, let them. You can pick up whoever, stream whoever. They are the easiest and most doable positions to stream. Take backup running backs and fill up your entire roster. Cut them before week 1 if the starter doesn't get hurt. Otherwise, again, you're like, there's no way those kickers and defenses are going to move up and down the ranks between now and then. You could find yourself a gem with some of these late round running backs, even guys like Boston Scott, Matt Breida, like even your non-traditional, even once the really good handcuffs are gone. Again, if you're some leagues do make you fill up your roster and fill up your starting lineup, and they won't let you do it. In that case, okay, then do your thing. But yeah, can't stress enough. Do not be the guy that takes freaking Justin Tucker in round 11. It just does not make any sense.
Stupid. I 100% agreement. Yeah, stack that roster with as much potential value gainers as you can, as long as your league allows it. 100%. Would love that. Yeah, I think that's a great point there. So moving towards, I guess the one guy I did want to touch upon in this last range too is you're the president of the fan club, Mr. Cordarrelle Patterson. I know he goes a bit earlier in redraft, but I've seen him there in underdog as late as 9, 10 even. Like I'm scooping him. I'm on the fan club with you there if I'm getting him at that price. You getting a lot of him this year, or what's your thoughts on Patterson?
Yeah, I did a whole team preview series earlier this off season. I've broke them all down with Dwayne, so I've kind of written about every player at this point. So at this point, I'm doing more articles, like trying to look at just finding the value at ADP and more kind of specific draft strategy stuff. So before this morning, I was working on finishing up like who is this year's PPR exploiter running back, and then the other one was who are some running backs like really undervalued just based on their workload relative to their ADP. And Cordarrelle Patterson's popping up in both, man. I don't get what the issue with this guy is. Again, round 4, round 5, if you're trying to put him in the low end RB2, I would understand the hesitancy with that. But when you look at him right now, to your point on underdog, really going outside the top 36 running backs right now, the only cheaper starting running back in all of fantasy at this point is whoever the hell ends up winning out in Houston. Maybe Dameon Pierce, maybe Rex Burkhead. I don't know, but we have CPAT there coming off a season where before he got injured, remember, he sprained his ankle pretty badly against the Cowboys. Overall RB7, RB6 PPR points per game after the injury. Comes back, plays through it. I don't think we give guys enough credit for doing this. Same thing happened with Zeke last year, but Derrick Henry and Deandre Swift, they missed half the season, but we don't care because they weren't, nuking our lineup while playing badly, while being hurt. Even while he was playing hurt, man, RB20 overall, RB31 per game. So now we just have an even bigger drop off. They added zero competition. Damian Williams on a minimum deal, 5th round running back Tyler Algier, who is fine, but come on, man. Like there's like 200 carries and targets available from Mike Davis leaving. So I don't see any problem with Dame or Algier like getting some of that work, but Patterson's the one that got paid. He's got one of their, I think, top 10 or 12 biggest contracts on the team. The quarterback downgrade, okay, that's all being priced into this. And again, round 8, round 9, I just think that, again, once you start comparing him to guys like Josh Jacobs and Antonio Gibson, who I think you could argue have less fantasy-friendly roles because of their lack of a pass-catching role. In full PPR, I just think Cordarrelle Patterson makes a ton of sense, man. Again, he is one of the biggest poppers in terms of looking at projections and just the projected opportunity versus their ADP, as well as looking at projections, which guys have the biggest boost going from standard to PPR. So, we're talking now like as general PPR 12-man leagues, but always got to be sure and know those rules because there are guys like Cordarrelle Patterson. Let me see who the other PPR running backs were. DeAndre Swift, Cordarrelle Patterson, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and James Cook were 4 guys that were just really booming up, going from standard to the PPR. Because we see that, man. Like last year, everyone loved DeAndre Swift in PPR, RB10 per game, RB20 in standard. I mean, Eckler in 2020 was the PPR RB13 standard, RB25. Literally one change in your scoring setting can be a difference between an RB1 and like almost an RB3.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, know those settings for sure. 100%. All these nuggets of what is up, you fantasy wolf. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, share your thoughts in the comments, check out some more videos, and join the newest Wolfpack by subscribing below.